Picture waking up to the sound of chainsaws on your property, and I mean your land, the deed you own free and clear, watching a 200-year-old oak tree older than your great-great-grandfather crash down while you're still holding a coffee mug. That was my Thursday morning. I'm Garrett Tremblay, and I'd moved to Pinehaven Estates, North Carolina, to escape drama after a brutal divorce. Instead, I got bulldozers at dawn, diesel smoke mixing with pine-scented air, and the crack of ancient timber splitting like bones. The Homeowners Association did this. No notice, no permission, no apology. When I called the HOA president, Shaina, a real estate agent who'd hated me since I refused to repaint my historic shutters, she purred, "Should have read the bylaws, hun. Oh, and we're suing you for $47,000. Bless your heart." What would you do? Comment below. Where are you watching from? Drop your state. I want to know if your HOA is this insane. Let me back up 18 months because you need to understand how I ended up in Shaina's crosshairs. I inherited 8 acres in Pinehaven Estates from my late Uncle Donovan, a Korean War vet who'd lived on that land since 1953. The property sits on an original land patent from 1824, meaning it predates the HOA by 140 years. When developers annexed the surrounding parcels in 1987 and slapped together Pinehaven Estates, Uncle Donovan's place got grandfathered in. Technically part of the community. Realistically, an island of old-world freedom surrounded by 340 cookie-cutter homes where even your mailbox needs board approval. Uncle Donovan raised me half the summers of my childhood on that land, taught me to fish in the creek, how to identify oak from hickory by the bark, why you never rush a dovetail joint. When he left it to me in his will, it felt like inheriting a heartbeat. I'm a semi-retired civil engineer, spent 30 years designing roads and bridges, the irony of which is about to become physically painful. And I just crawled out of a divorce that cost me half my retirement and all my tolerance for passive-aggressive communication. I needed peace. I needed dirt under my fingernails instead of courtroom anxiety. So I moved to North Carolina with 2 rescue dogs, Hank, a one-eyed beagle mix, and Dolly, a pit bull who's terrified of butterflies, and started over. Mornings became sacred, coffee on the wraparound porch, pine resin smell thick in the July heat, woodpeckers hammering the dead cedar like tiny jackhammers. I planted tomatoes and cucumbers, built Adirondack chairs in my workshop, volunteered at the food bank on Tuesdays, designed a wheelchair ramp for the town library pro bono because that's what you do when you have skills. I kept to myself. Small-town North Carolina respects that. Pull your weight, don't start fires, you're golden. Then I met Shaina Kovac. Shaina's 48, a real estate agent who married up twice and now runs the Pinehaven Estates HOA like Marie Antoinette with a gavel. Platinum blonde bob that costs more than my truck payment. White Mercedes G-Wagon. Vanity plate HOA Pres, because subtlety is for renters. She's the type who says bless your heart before handing you a $500 fine. The board has 7 members. Shaina owns 6 of them. She cited elderly Mr. Cho $500 for an unapproved garden gnome. Not a joke. A ceramic gnome. Meanwhile, her book club friends have inflatable flamingos and nobody says a word. Her obsession is architectural harmony, code for everything must look like Pottery Barn threw up on a golf course. My colonial blue shutters, historically accurate to the 1830s and documented by the State Preservation Office, offended her beige and taupe worldview. 6 months in, I got a violation notice. Non-compliant exterior paint, remedy within 30 days or face $250 weekly. I appealed with historical records, photographs from the 1890s, a letter from preservation experts. The county sided with me. Shaina's smile never cracked, but I watched her knuckles go white around her pen. The fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects. My palms were slick. "I suppose," she said, voice honey-sweet, "some people think rules don't apply to them." That was the shot across the bow. Over the next year, citations for my work truck parked on the street overnight, nobody else got tagged. A non-regulation bird feeder, my dogs barking once at a UPS truck. I paid the fines, kept my head down, tried to be invisible. Then, 6 months before the bulldozers, Shaina proposed the Community Connectivity Project, a private road cutting through the back quarter of my land to shave 90 seconds off residents' drive to the golf course. 90 seconds. To destroy trees that had survived the Civil War. She held the vote at a meeting I was never notified about. My invitation email mysteriously bounced. Thursday morning, 6:47 a.m. Hank started barking, not his usual squirrel on the fence bark, but the deep, frantic alarm that means something's wrong. I stumbled to the window in my plaid pajama pants and saw them. 2 bulldozers, a backhoe, and a survey crew in neon yellow vests crawling over my back pasture like ants on a dropped sandwich. I didn't bother with a shirt, just shoved my feet into unlaced boots and ran. The smell hit me first, diesel exhaust, thick and acrid, mixing with the cool morning dew still clinging to the grass. One of the dozers was already gouging a muddy trench through what used to be wildflower meadow. The other was positioning itself in front of the oldest oak on the property, a giant I'd measured at 6 feet diameter. Uncle Donovan used to say that tree was already tall when his grandfather was born. "Hey! Hey!" I was shouting, waving my arms like a lunatic. "What the hell are you doing?" The foreman, name patch said Trey, climbed down from the dozer cab, looking annoyed that I existed. He pulled a work order from his clipboard and shoved it at me. "HOA authorized construction. Start date today. You got a problem? Call them." I stared at the paper. Official HOA letterhead. Shaina's signature at the bottom, looping and confident, probably signed while sipping a latte that cost more than Trey's hourly wage. "I never signed off on this. This is my property." Trey shrugged. "Not my problem, man. I got a contract. You want us to stop? Get the HOA to tell us." I tried calling Shaina. Voicemail. Her outgoing message included the phrase "living my best life," which should be a felony. I tried the HOA management company, some outfit called Prestige Community Services that charges $1,200 a year per household to answer phones and ignore complaints. The receptionist put me on hold for 6 minutes of smooth jazz that made me want to commit crimes, then told me, "The board president handles special projects directly. You'll need to reach out to Mrs. Kovac." By the time I got off the phone, they'd already cut a 40-foot scar through my land. The dozer at the oak revved its engine. I watched the blade bite into the trunk. The crack sounded like a rifle shot. 217 years of growth. I counted the rings later, sitting on my porch with a whiskey I didn't remember pouring. Gone in 90 seconds. I took photographs. Dozens of them. The tire tracks gouging black mud. The splintered stumps. That massive oak lying on its side. Root ball torn open like a wound, exposing the pale flesh of severed wood. Then I drove straight to the county clerk's office and pulled every property record I could find. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the pages. No easement, no covenant, no legal right for the HOA to touch 1 inch of my land. I filed a police report. Deputy Ortiz, good guy, lives 3 streets over, coaches Little League, took my statement and walked the property line with me. He shook his head. "This is bad, Garrett, real bad, but it's civil, not criminal. You're gonna need a restraining order, maybe an injunction." "Can't you arrest them for trespassing, destruction of property?" "I can cite the contractor, sure, but the HOA is going to lawyer up and claim they had authorization under the bylaws. Then it's a judge's problem, and judges hate HOA disputes. You'll be in court for 2 years. He squeezed my shoulder. "I'm sorry, man. Get a lawyer today." I emailed Shaina from my truck, subject line "cease and desist illegal construction." Attached all the photos, copied the entire HOA board. Her reply came back in 4 minutes. "Garrett, check bylaw 17.3F. This was approved in accordance with community procedures. I'm sorry you're upset, but the work will continue. See you in court, sweetie." I opened the HOA covenant. 89 pages of legal word sludge designed to make you give up and plant approved shrubs. Found bylaw 17.3F. The board may authorize infrastructure improvements on any parcel where majority community benefit is demonstrated and approved by board vote. Translation: we can do whatever we want if we say it helps the community. Vague enough to drive a bulldozer through, literally. My lawyer, Stuart, said it was legally questionable at best, which is lawyer speak for "you're probably right, but also probably screwed." HOA had deep pockets. They dragged this out until I went broke. Stuart's retainer, $8,000. I'd just rebuilt my savings after the divorce, and then, a week later, I got served at the food bank. While I was ladling soup for people with actual problems. The process server walked up, said my name, handed me the papers in front of 20 volunteers and 40 clients. Shaina was suing me for $47,000, claimed my obstruction delayed the project, costing contractor fees. The room went silent. Humiliation tastes like copper pennies. I walked to my truck, wondering how many people had already texted Shaina to tell her they'd witnessed my public shaming. If your HOA threatens legal action, document everything. Photos, emails, certified mail. Courts love paper trails, and sloppy HOAs leave gaps you can exploit. Shaina didn't just want to win in court. She wanted to destroy me socially first. 3 days after I got served, the whisper campaign started. I'd be at the hardware store picking up deck screws and conversations would stop mid-sentence when I walked down the aisle. At the farmer's market, a woman I'd chatted with every Saturday for a year suddenly became fascinated by her phone screen when I said hello. Then came the Facebook post. Pinehaven Estates has a private community group, 732 members, which is more than actually live here because it includes renters, absentee owners, and apparently every nosy relative within a 50-mile radius. Shaina posted at 9 p.m. on a Sunday, prime social media rage hour. It's heartbreaking when one person's selfishness puts an entire community's safety and property values at risk. The board has worked tirelessly on improvements that benefit all residents, but sadly, some people think rules don't apply to them. Praying for a peaceful resolution. #community first, #Pinehaven strong. She didn't name me, didn't have to. The comments rolled in like a sewage flood. Some people move to a community and immediately think they own the place. Heard he screamed at the construction workers and threatened them. I didn't. I never raised my voice to anyone except maybe Hank when he tried to eat the entire stick of butter off the counter. My sister's friend said he's been unstable since his divorce. That one landed like a fist to the solar plexus. Deborah, a retired teacher who I'd helped move 70-pound boxes when she downsized last spring, wrote, "Very sad situation. Hope he gets the help he needs." I stared at that comment for 10 minutes. Deborah thought I was crazy. Deborah, who'd brought me homemade pumpkin bread at Thanksgiving. My daughter Marissa called from college at midnight, voice shaking. "Dad, someone tagged you in a post calling you a NIMBY psycho. And now my roommate's mom, who lives in Pinehaven, is texting asking if you're okay, like you're having a breakdown. I had to tell 3 people today that my father isn't losing his mind. This is humiliating. For you or for me?" I said it as a joke. It came out bitter. "Dad, I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm handling it. Are you?" I didn't have a good answer. The worst part wasn't the Facebook post. It was the grocery store 3 days later. My cart had a squeaky wheel. Eek, eek, eek. Echoing through the frozen food aisle like a neon sign pointing at the local pariah. I passed 3 neighbors I'd waved to for 18 months. All 3 suddenly found the nutritional information on ice cream containers absolutely riveting. I stood there holding a bag of frozen peas, wondering if this was how social death felt. Slow, cold, surrounded by discounted drumsticks. And then Lionel Casterbridge knocked on my door with a casserole and a manila folder. Lionel's 68, a retired postal worker with the energy of a man half his age and the organizational skills of someone who spent 3 decades sorting mail in his sleep. He was the only board member who'd voted no on Shaina's road project, which earned him a citation for a non-compliant mailbox post that had been in the exact same spot for 15 years. "Figured you'd need this," he said, handing me the folder, still warm from his printer. "And the casserole, tuna noodle. Don't judge me, my late wife's recipe. It's better than it sounds." Inside the folder, 3 years of unredacted HOA meeting minutes. I flipped through them while Lionel helped himself to my coffee. Shaina had been running the HOA like a personal slush fund. $40,000 to her brother-in-law Todd's landscaping company over 2 years. I'd done enough municipal contract work to know that comparable firms would have bid $26,000. Meeting notices mysteriously bouncing for board members who disagreed with her. Selective enforcement so blatant it would be funny if it wasn't bankrupting people. Her book club friends had inflatable Christmas decorations up in February, but Mr. Cho got fined for a gnome. "She's a bully with a gavel," Lionel said quietly. "But bullies get sloppy when they think they're untouchable." "Why are you helping me?" He smiled, sad around the edges. "Because she did the same thing to the Johnsons 2 years ago, and the Patel family before them. Elderly widow, couldn't afford to fight, lost her home over $9,000 in fines." His jaw tightened. "Someone's got to stop her. You look angry enough to try." That night, I pulled the HOA financials. My divorce lawyer Stuart had once told me that in North Carolina, HOA members have the legal right to inspect financial records. Boards hate it, but it's the law. I filed a formal records request. Shaina's lawyer tried to stall. I filed a state complaint. 10 days later, the financials hit my inbox. I nearly dropped my laptop. The road project was budgeted at $78,000, but when I FOIA requested the actual contractor invoices through the county, the road crossed a public utility easement, making them public record. The real cost was $52,000. $26,000 just vanished into thin air. My hands were shaking when I dug deeper. Shaina's real estate firm was the registered agent for the contractor's LLC. She was paying herself with HOA money and calling it community improvement. I sat there in my kitchen at 2 a.m., the numbers glowing on my screen, and something cold and sharp settled in my chest. This wasn't just about my trees anymore. I amended my legal response that night, countersued the HOA for $150,000, property damage, legal fees, emotional distress, filed a formal complaint with the State Oversight Board, attached every invoice, every padded contract, every questionable transaction. Shaina's lawyer, Gil, sent a letter calling my claims frivolous and borderline defamatory. The guy wore tan suits and a Bluetooth earpiece like he was auditioning for a 2005 remake of The Apprentice. I didn't waste time responding to Gil. Instead, I uploaded the public records to the community Facebook group. No accusations, no commentary, just the PDFs and one sentence. Transparency matters. You decide. The comments shifted within minutes. Wait, why are there two different budget numbers? Who approved Todd's company without competitive bids? Is anyone else bothered by this? Shaina deleted my post within an hour. But screenshots live forever, and 37 people had already downloaded the files. I poured myself a bourbon and watched my phone light up with private messages. People I hadn't heard from in months suddenly remembered my name. The war had just gone public. Shaina called an emergency special board meeting 4 days after my Facebook post went viral. The agenda had one item: member conduct violations, potential expulsion. I got 48 hours notice via certified mail. The HOA bylaws require 10 days. I made a note of that in the legal pad I'd started carrying everywhere, the one that was filling up with Shaina's mistakes faster than I could flip pages. The meeting was held at the clubhouse on a Tuesday night. I showed up 15 minutes early with Stuart, my lawyer, who'd started giving me a bulk rate discount because this case was more entertaining than anything on Netflix. The parking lot was packed. 60-plus residents crammed into a room designed for 30, the air already thick with the smell of cheap carpet and whatever industrial cleaner they used on the tables. People stood along the walls, sat on the floor. Someone in the back row was eating popcorn. Actual microwave popcorn, the butter smell cutting through the pine sol. Shaina sat at the head table in a cream blazer that probably cost more than my truck payment, her platinum bob freshly blown out, smile fixed in place like she was hosting a particularly unpleasant PTA meeting. She called the meeting to order at 7 p.m. sharp. "We hate doing this," she began, voice dripping with fake sympathy that could have doubled as pancake syrup. "But Mr. Tremblay's recent actions have created a hostile environment that harms our community. Bylaw 22 allows the board to expel members whose conduct is detrimental to the common interest." She presented her evidence on a PowerPoint. Yes, a PowerPoint, with slide transitions, the kind that whoosh. Slide 1. The police report I'd filed after the bulldozer incident, framed as filing false claims against contractors performing authorized work. Slide 2. My Facebook post with the financial documents labeled defamation and spreading misinformation. Slide 3. A photo of my work truck parked on the street overnight. Apparently a violation of some parking rule I'd never heard of and that had never been enforced on anyone else. Behind Shaina, I could literally see 3 cars parked on the street through the clubhouse window. The irony was so thick you could have spread it on toast. Stuart stood up. "Mrs. Kovac, these allegations are baseless and—" Shaina cut him off with a smile sharp enough to open mail. "Mr. Friedman, this is an internal HOA matter. We'll hear from Mr. Tremblay if he wishes to speak, but this isn't a courtroom." I'd been sitting there watching this performance, my jaw tight enough to crack teeth, and suddenly I remembered something my Uncle Donovan used to say: "Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake." I stood up, calm, hands in my pockets. "I have one question for the board." Shaina's smile faltered for half a second. "Go ahead." "Has anyone here actually read the contractor's insurance certificate?" The room went silent, 60 people holding their breath. Someone's phone buzzed and it sounded like a chainsaw. "I'm sorry," Shaina said, but her left eye twitched. Tiny. I caught it. "The contractor, Green Path Construction, their liability insurance." I pulled a folded document from my jacket pocket. I'd requested it from the county 3 days ago, along with every other permit and certification. Their policy expired 11 days before they started work on my property. I walked to the front table and slid copies across to each board member. Meaning if anyone got hurt during construction, a kid on a bike, someone walking their dog, anyone, the HOA is personally liable, not the contractor, you, your houses, your savings accounts. Board member Portia, a nervous accountant who always looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, went sheet white. Eugene, the treasurer who'd rubber-stamped Shaina's budgets for 3 years, stammered, "Shaina, did you verify the insurance before approving?" "This is a distraction tactic," Shaina snapped. Her hands were flat on the table now, knuckles white. "We're here to discuss Mr. Tremblay's conduct, not—" "And the county never issued a grading permit," I continued, my voice level, almost casual. "You need one for any earth-moving project over 1,000 square feet. This road was 40 feet wide and 200 feet long. That's 8,000 square feet." I paused. Let it sink in. "The fine for unpermitted grading in North Carolina is $10,000 per day until you get compliant. It's been 53 days. Want to do the math?" The room exploded. Residents shouting questions, demanding answers. Lionel was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Portia looked genuinely ill. Shaina banged her gavel, an actual wooden gavel she'd bought herself because subtlety was never her strong suit. "We will table this discussion and verify—" "Motion to vote on expulsion," board member Marcus interrupted. Retired dentist, Shaina loyalist, never voted against her once, but even he looked rattled. "We need to move forward." The vote was called. 3 for expulsion. 3 against Lionel and 2 others who'd apparently located their spines. Shaina broke the tie. "Mr. Tremblay is suspended from all HOA privileges pending resolution of legal matters." But I could see it in the room, the shift. People weren't looking at me with suspicion anymore. They were looking at Shaina with questions. After the meeting, Deirdre, a mom of 3 who'd been denied a swing set variance last year because it was visually disruptive, caught me in the parking lot. "How do we get her out?" she whispered. "Recall election. State law says we need 30% of homeowners to sign a petition." I pulled out my phone, showed her the draft I'd been working on since yesterday. "I need people willing to knock on doors." She nodded, jaw set. "I'll start tomorrow." I drove home with the windows down, cool October air washing over me, and for the first time in 2 months I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like a wave building offshore, and Shaina had no idea what was about to hit her. The envelope showed up in my P.O. box on a Saturday morning. No return address, no postmark I recognized. Just my name typed on a white label and a bulk of papers inside that made the thing bulge like it was about to give birth. I opened it sitting in my truck, the paper dry and slightly warm from sitting in the metal box. The first document I pulled out was a foreclosure notice from 2019. HOA of Pinehaven Estates versus Patel, Indira, Lot 47. Outstanding dues and violations. $9,200 foreclosure proceeding authorized by board vote 6-1. Paperclip to the front was a handwritten note in neat cursive. Ask why she really left. A friend. My hands went cold. I sat there in the post office parking lot, engine ticking as it cooled, flipping through page after page of violation notices. Fence height, unapproved flowers, driveway parking. Each one stamped with Shaina's signature and a $200 fine. I Googled the name when I got home. Indira Patel, obituary from 2021, age 73, died in an assisted living facility 90 miles away, complications from stress-related illness. Survived by 1 son, 2 grandchildren, and probably a lot of people who wished they'd done something sooner. I found her son Rajiv through a mutual aid group. He'd posted about helping elderly South Asian families navigate predatory housing situations. I called him that afternoon, my thumb hovering over the number for a solid minute before I pressed it. He picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Patel? My name is Garrett Tremblay. I live in Pinehaven Estates, and I think your mother—" "You're the guy fighting Shaina Kovac." I blinked. "How did you—" "It's been all over the community groups. Someone sent me the Facebook post with the financials." His voice was tight, controlled, the kind of calm that comes from years of swallowing rage. "What do you need?" "I need to know what happened to your mother." There was a long pause. Traffic sounds in the background, a horn, someone shouting in a language I didn't recognize. "They hounded her for 2 years, he finally said. Started with a fence that was 6 inches too tall according to some code she'd never heard of. Mom built it herself after my dad died, 70 years old. out there with a post hole digger and a level because she wanted privacy in the backyard where she did her morning prayers. Shaina personally came to her door and told her it was visually disruptive, fined her $200 a month until she took it down. I could picture it. An elderly woman, a fence she'd built with her own hands. Shaina in her Mercedes, clipboard in hand, smile painted on. That was just the beginning, Rajiv continued. Wildflowers in the flower bed, they said they were weeds, parking in the driveway because the garage opener broke and she couldn't afford the $400 repair. A bird feeder. His voice cracked. They buried her in violations until she owed $9,000. She was on a fixed income, Social Security and whatever Dad left her. She couldn't afford a lawyer, so they foreclosed. She had a stroke the week after the eviction. My jaw was so tight I thought my teeth might crack. I spent her last 2 years visiting her in a nursing home where she didn't remember my name half the time, he said quietly. And I blame Shaina Kovac for killing her. I flipped through the documents again. Foreclosure auction notice. Winning bid. $140,000, maybe 60% of market value. 6 months later, listed by Shaina Kovac Realty for $225,000. She'd made $85,000 off an elderly widow's forced eviction and probably slept like a baby every night. Something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. Not anger. Colder than that. Purpose. Rajiv, I'm taking over the HOA. We're forcing a recall election, and when I win, everyone's going to know exactly what she did to your mother. What do you need from me? Testimony, records, and if you're willing, come to the recall meeting. Tell people her story. I'll be there. I hung up and sat on my porch for an hour watching the sun bleed orange through the pine trees Shaina hadn't managed to destroy yet. Hank curled up at my feet. Dolly rested her massive head on my knee, her eyes watching me with that particular pit bull concern that always made me feel like someone was paying attention. This wasn't about my oak trees anymore. This wasn't even about the $47,000 lawsuit. This was about every person Shaina had crushed because she could, because no one had stopped her, because the system was designed to let people like her win. I called Lionel. We're not just recalling her, I said. We're taking the whole board. You and me, we're running. When do we start? Tonight, bring coffee and your printer. We've got 340 doors to reach and we need 102 signatures. Time to go to work. We set up war room operations at my kitchen table that night. Lionel showed up with a laptop older than my truck, a printer that jammed every fourth page, and a thermos of coffee strong enough to strip paint off a battleship. First things first, he said, spreading out a hand-drawn map of Pinehaven estates that looked like something from a heist movie. We need 102 signatures, that's 30% of the 340 households. North Carolina HOA law is specific about that number. But we're not stopping there. We need overwhelming numbers, because Shaina's going to challenge every signature that even looks like it might have been signed during a light drizzle. How many are we shooting for? 150, maybe more. He tapped the map with a pen that was running out of ink. These neighborhoods here, he circled the older section closest to my property. They remember when the HOA was reasonable, before Shaina turned it into her personal fiefdom. These folks are our base. We spent 3 hours building a database. Every household, every violation notice we could dig up from Lionel's files, every person who'd ever been on Shaina's bad side, which turned out to be roughly half the community. Turned out she'd made a lot of enemies while building her little empire. The next morning, Deirdre showed up with 3 other moms from the elementary school carpool rotation, all of them wearing yoga pants and expressions that suggested they'd toppled governments before breakfast. We've got a phone tree, Deirdre announced, handing me a spreadsheet that could have coordinated a Mars landing. 42 people willing to make calls. Another 18 who'll go door to door. When do we start? Now, I said. Perfect. Jennifer here got cited last month for a decorative garden flag that said, "Welcome." Apparently it was visual clutter. She's very motivated. Jennifer smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. By day 3, we had a system running like clockwork. Lionel handled the legal paperwork. 30 years at the post office taught him more about bureaucratic procedure than most lawyers learn in a decade. I worked on the financial documentation, cross-referencing every questionable expense. My engineering background made me fluent in spreadsheets and municipal codes, and Shaina's sloppy record-keeping was like finding structural cracks in a bridge. Once you knew where to look, they were everywhere. Contractor invoices that didn't match work orders, landscaping bills for properties that didn't exist, a $5,000 consultation fee paid to a company with no website, no phone number, and a registered address at a UPS store. I'd done enough municipal contract work to know when someone's trying to hide money, they leave breadcrumbs everywhere. Stewart reviewed everything and whistled low. If this goes to the state HOA board, she's toast. Burnt toast. The kind you have to scrape into the trash. On day 4, I went door knocking with Deirdre, hit 30 houses in 4 hours. The first guy who answered, Jerry, retired plumber, looked like he'd been waiting his whole life for this conversation, signed before I finished my pitch. She fined me $300 because my grass clippings blew into the street, he said, pen moving fast. I mow every Saturday, have for 20 years. She drove by once during a windstorm and sent me a violation notice with a photo. A photo of grass clippings that were already gone by the time the notice arrived. The anger in this community wasn't just deep. It was specific, documented, and it had been simmering for years. Rajiv drove down from Charlotte on day 5. He brought copies of every document related to his mother's foreclosure, violation notices, payment records, the auction paperwork. We sat on my porch while he walked me through it, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly when he held up the final eviction notice. She got this on a Tuesday, he said quietly. Had the stroke on Friday. I didn't have words for that. Just sat there while Hank sniffed at his shoes and Dolly leaned her full 60 pounds against his leg, which is pit bull language for you're not alone. By the end of week 1, 112 signatures. By week 2, people were coming to us. The momentum had shifted. That's when I made the flyer. 1 page. Simple. My old boss used to say people don't care about numbers, they care about what numbers mean. Your HOA fees, where do they go? Shaina's brother-in-law's landscaping, $40,000 over market rate. Expired contractor insurance. Your risk, unpermitted construction, $530,000 in potential fines. Foreclosures on elderly residents, 4 in 5 years. All resold by Shaina Kovac Realty. Time for new leadership. Sign the recall petition. We printed 500. They vanished in 2 days. We hit 140 signatures. Shaina panicked. She scheduled a town hall for truth at the clubhouse. I didn't go, but Lionel did. He said she wore a navy pantsuit and brought a PowerPoint about community unity and outside agitators. 12 people showed up. 11 came to yell at her. 1 was her sister. On day 14, we submitted 163 signatures, 48% of Pinehaven estates. The state certified it in 3 days. Election scheduled for 30 days out. Lionel and I filed to run for the board that afternoon. So did Deirdre and 2 others. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching fireflies blink in the dusk. The smell of honeysuckle hung thick and sweet. Someone down the street was grilling burgers. For the first time since the bulldozers came, I could breathe all the way down. 30 days until the vote. Shaina had 30 days to realize she'd already lost. Shaina didn't go quietly. Cornered animals never do. 4 days after we filed the recall petition, her lawyer Gil showed up at my door. It was 8:30 on a Wednesday morning. I was still in my work clothes from the shop, sawdust in my hair, hands smelling like wood stain. Mr. Tremblay, Gil said, tan suit somehow looking cheaper in natural light, Bluetooth earpiece blinking like a tiny robot eye. My client would like to discuss a settlement. I leaned against the door frame, didn't invite him in. I'm listening. Drop the countersuit, drop the recall. Mrs. Kovacs will pay for 10 new oak saplings, professional installation, and $10,000 cash for your trouble. You walk away, she walks away, everyone moves on. I looked at him for a long moment. Somewhere behind me, Hank was snoring like a chainsaw hitting a nail. My trees were 200 years old, Gil. 10 grand doesn't buy that. Neither do saplings. Be reasonable. Tell your client I'll see her at the ballot box. I started to close the door. She's prepared to go higher. I stopped. How much higher? 25,000. Cash. Today. For half a second I actually considered it. 25 grand would cover my legal bills and then some. I could fix the property, replace the truck, maybe take Marissa on a vacation she'd been asking about since her mom and I split. Then I thought about Indira Patel, about the stroke she had the week after losing her home, about Jerry and his grass clippings, about every person Shaina had crushed because nobody had the resources or the anger or the stubbornness to stop her. No, I said, and closed the door. Gil was gone when I looked out the window 2 minutes later, but I had the feeling this wasn't over. I was right. The next morning, I walked out to my truck and stopped dead. Someone had keyed the driver's side, a long, jagged scratch from headlight to tailgate, spray painted across my mailbox in red, "Liar." I stood there staring at it, my hands curling into fists, and I had to remind myself that punching a mailbox wouldn't solve anything and would probably just break my hand. I called Deputy Ortiz. He came out within an hour, took photos, dusted for prints even though we both knew it was pointless. "You got security cameras?" he asked. "No, but my neighbor 2 doors down does." We walked over together. Mrs. Chen, a retired nurse who'd been cited by Shaina for having the wrong color rose bushes, I am not making this up, pulled up her footage without hesitation. 2 a.m. A white pickup truck with a contractor logo on the side circled my street twice, then stopped in front of my house. A man got out, big, heavy build, baseball cap pulled low. He keyed the truck, spray-painted the mailbox, and drove off. Mrs. Chen zoomed in on the license plate. Clear as day. Ortiz ran it. "That's Todd Vance, owner of Green Vista Landscaping. Shaina's brother-in-law." "Yeah." Ortiz's jaw tightened. "I'm bringing him in." Todd was arrested that afternoon. Vandalism. I filed for a restraining order. When the DA reviewed the case, they added attempted witness intimidation because of the timing, right in the middle of the recall election. But the story didn't end there. My phone buzzed around 6 p.m., text from a number I didn't recognize. "Check your email. You'll want to see this." I opened my laptop. New message from an anonymous Gmail account. Subject line, "You need to know." Attached, screenshots of text messages between Shaina and Todd. Shaina, "He's not backing down. We need to make this stop." Todd, "What do you want me to do?" Shaina, "I don't know. Scare him. Make him regret this. Just make it stop." Todd, "I'll handle it." Shaina, "Don't tell me details. I don't want to know." I read them 3 times, then I forwarded them to Ortiz, to Stewart, and to every email address on our recall petition list. Within an hour, the screenshots were all over the community Facebook group. Shaina tried to claim they were fake, doctored, taken out of context, but the timestamps matched Todd's arrest. The phone number matched her cell. She'd just implicated herself in a crime, in writing, because she was too arrogant to think anyone would ever hold her accountable. The recall election was 3 weeks away. We had 163 signatures when we started. By the end of that week, people were calling us asking how they could help, apologizing for not signing sooner, wanting to know if there was anything they could do to make sure Shaina lost. I told them the best thing they could do was show up and vote. Lionel called me on Saturday morning. "Garrett, we might actually win this thing." "Might? Okay, we're going to win this thing, but we need to prepare for what happens after. When we take over the board, we're inheriting a mess. Shaina's going to burn everything on her way out if she can." "Then we'd better be ready." Sunday afternoon, Lionel, Deirdre, Rajiv, who'd driven down again, and I sat on my porch and started planning what came next. Not just how to win, but what to do when we did, how to fix the financials, how to rewrite the bylaws so nobody could ever pull this again. How to restore trust in a community that had been poisoned from the top down for years. The smell of rain was coming in from the west. Thunder rumbled low and distant. Dolly pressed against my leg, nervous about the storm. "We're not just taking over an HOA," Rajiv said quietly. "We're taking back a community." I raised my coffee mug. "Then let's do it right." 3 weeks until the vote. Shaina was out of moves, out of allies, and running out of time. We were just getting started. Shaina's world was collapsing, but she wasn't done yet. Desperate people do desperate things, and Shaina had spent years building a network of favors, threats, and carefully maintained relationships. She was about to cash them all in. The smear campaign went nuclear. Letters started showing up in mailboxes, not HOA official letters, just plain white envelopes with no return address. Inside, a single printed page, "What you don't know about Garrett Tremblay." It was a masterpiece of half-truths and implications. My divorce was messy and contentious. True, but what divorce isn't? I'd been fired from my last engineering job. Technically, I'd taken early retirement during a company restructuring, but the word fired does a lot of heavy lifting. There were questions about my financial stability, based on nothing except the fact that I'd hired a lawyer, which apparently meant I was broke. The letter ended with, "Is this the kind of person you want controlling your property values?" Marissa called me in tears. Someone had sent a copy to her college campus address. "Dad, they're saying you're unstable. They're saying you got fired for incompetence. None of this is true, right?" None of it's true, sweetheart. It's a hit piece. Shaina's panicking. It doesn't feel like she's panicking. It feels like she's winning. That one hurt because for about 6 hours I wondered if she was right. Then Lionel showed up at my door at 9 p.m., out of breath like he'd been running. He was 78 years old and had just speed-walked 4 blocks in the dark. "Eugene's ready to talk," he gasped. Eugene, the HOA treasurer, Shaina's rubber stamp for 4 years, the quiet guy who'd sat at that board table and approved every shady contract, every padded invoice, every questionable expense. Why now? Because Shaina just tried to throw him under the bus. Lionel pulled out his phone, showed me a group text from the remaining board members. Shaina had sent it an hour ago. Any financial irregularities were approved by Eugene as treasurer. I relied on his expertise and judgment. I had no knowledge of any improprieties. Classic. She was building her defense by sacrificing her most loyal supporter. Eugene lived 3 streets over in a modest ranch house with solar panels and a garden that was genuinely impressive. His wife Margaret answered the door, a thin woman with MS who moved slowly with a walker. She looked at us like we were life rafts. "He's in the kitchen," she said. "He hasn't slept in 3 days." Eugene was sitting at a small table covered in papers, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had to be cold by now. He was 65, with the kind of face that looked like it had never told a lie until it had to, and then couldn't stop. "I can't do this anymore," he said without preamble. "I can't sleep. I can't eat. Margaret keeps asking me what's wrong, and I can't tell her because I'm ashamed." I pulled out a chair, sat down. "Tell me now." "She made me cook the books." His voice cracked. "Not at first. At first it was just, she'd ask me to approve things without full documentation, said it would speed up projects. I trusted her. Then it got bigger. Fake invoices, shell companies. She'd tell me what numbers to put in the reports." "Why didn't you say something?" He looked at Margaret, who was standing in the doorway. "We can't afford to move. Margaret's medical bills. And we're barely hanging on as it is." Shaina knew that. She told me once, not threatening, just casual, like she was doing me a favor, that if I ever had trouble paying our HOA dues, she could work something out. I knew what that meant. I knew what happened to the Patels. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. "These are the real financial records. Everything she made me hide. $130,000 over 4 years. Fake invoices, kickbacks, contracts to her brother-in-law that were 40% over market rate. All of it." I took the drive like it might explode. "Eugene, this is evidence of a crime. You know that, right?" "I know." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'll testify if it goes to trial. I'll face whatever consequences come. But I need her stopped before she destroys anyone else." Margaret wheeled closer, put her hand on her husband's shoulder. "We talked about it. We're old. We've had a good life. We can't let her keep doing this to people." I wanted to tell them they were brave, that they were doing the right thing. But the words stuck in my throat because I knew what this confession might cost them. Instead, I just said, "Thank you." I uploaded the files that night, sent them to the DA, to the state HOA Oversight Board, to Stewart with a note that said, "Game over." Then I encrypted a copy and sent it to every single email on our recall petition list with a message. "The truth about where your money went. Certified financial records from the HOA treasurer. No commentary needed. See you at the polls." By morning, 300 people had opened it. By noon, the local news had picked it up. That reporter Simone Hatcher from WRAL was calling my phone every 20 minutes. By evening, Shaina's real estate license was under formal investigation by the state licensing board. By midnight, 2 more board members had resigned rather than face what was coming. I sat on my porch with Lionel and a bottle of bourbon we'd been saving for this moment. The night air was cool. Crickets were screaming in the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice and went quiet. "She's got one move left," Lionel said. "What's that?" "She'll try to cancel the election, emergency injunction, claim the process was corrupted or biased or whatever her lawyers can come up with." "Can she do that?" He shrugged. "She can try, but we've got the signatures, we've got the certification, and now we've got Eugene." He poured 2 fingers of bourbon into my mug. "She's out of miracles, Garrett." I raised my mug. "To Eugene and Margaret. To people who find their courage when it counts." We drank to that. 18 days until the election. Election day arrived on a Saturday in late October, with the kind of crisp, clear weather that makes you believe in new beginnings. The polling station was set up in the clubhouse, the same room where Shaina had tried to expel me 3 months ago. Voting hours, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. By 9:30 there was already a line. I got there at 9:50 and counted 40 people waiting. Deputy Ortiz was standing by the door in uniform. Not required, but he'd volunteered. "Keeping the peace," he said with a wink, "and making sure nobody tries anything stupid." News vans were parked across the street. Simone Hatcher from WRAL was doing a live shot with the clubhouse in the background. What started as a property dispute has become a referendum on HOA governance across North Carolina, she was saying into the camera. Experts say this recall could set precedent for how homeowners hold their boards accountable. I'd never wanted to be a test case. I just wanted my trees back. But here we were. Shaina arrived at 10:03 in her white Mercedes, wearing a navy dress and pearls like she was running for Congress. She'd brought her sister and 2 people I didn't recognize, probably friends she'd called in for moral support. Her smile was fixed, brittle, the kind of smile that would shatter if you touched it. She walked past the line of voters without making eye contact with anyone, head high, and I had to give her credit for showing up at all. A smarter person would have stayed home. I voted at 10:15, filled in the bubbles carefully. Yes on the recall, Garrett Tremblay, Lionel Casterbridge, Deirdre Walsh, and 2 others for the new board. My hand was steady. I'd been waiting 3 months for this moment. The rest of the day crawled. I sat on a bench outside with Hank and Dolly, watching people stream in. Families, elderly couples, single parents with kids in tow, Jerry the retired plumber who'd been fined for grass clippings, Mrs. Chen with her security camera footage, Deirdre with her 3 kids, who made a field trip out of it and took selfies in front of the Vote Here sign. Rajiv showed up at 2 p.m. He'd driven down from Charlotte that morning. "Couldn't miss this," he said, shaking my hand. "Mom would have wanted to see it." By 3:30, the line was still 20 people deep. Record turnout. The neutral counting firm, court-ordered after Shaina's previous shenanigans, was getting nervous about the crowd size. They'd expected maybe 200 voters. It looked like we'd blow past 300. 4 p.m. Polls closed. The counters locked the doors and started their work. The wait was excruciating. By 6 p.m., the clubhouse was packed. Standing room only, people pressed shoulder to shoulder, the smell of too many bodies in too small a space mixing with burnt coffee from the pot someone had made at noon and forgotten about. The fire marshal looked concerned but didn't shut it down. 6:30. The lead counter, a woman named Patricia with reading glasses on a chain, stepped to the front of the room with a clipboard. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Total eligible voters, 420, including absentee ballots. Total votes cast, 381. That's a 91% turnout. Someone whistled. I'd never heard of HOA turnout above 40%. Patricia looked down at her clipboard. On the question of recalling the current board, 289 votes, yes. 92 votes, no. The room exploded. Cheering, applause. Someone near the back started chanting, "Out! Out! Out!" and half the room joined in. I looked at Shaina. She was standing near the side wall, her face a frozen mask. Her sister had an arm around her shoulders. For just a second, maybe half a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered Indira Patel's obituary, the stroke, the nursing home, Jerry's grass clippings, Eugene's shaking hands, my 200-year-old oak tree lying on its side with the root ball torn open. The pity evaporated. Patricia held up her hand for quiet. For the new board positions, the following candidates have been elected. Garrett Tremblay, 242 votes. Lionel Casterbridge, 238. Deirdre Walsh, 221. I stopped hearing the numbers. Lionel grabbed my shoulder. Deirdre was crying. Rajiv pulled me into a hug that nearly cracked my ribs. Then Deputy Ortiz stepped forward, and the room went quiet again. He was holding his phone. His face was serious. "Mrs. Kovac," he said, and his voice carried across the room like a judge pronouncing sentence. "I need you to come with me." Shaina's face went white. "What?" "The district attorney's office has issued a warrant for your arrest. Embezzlement, fraud, elder financial exploitation." He walked toward her slowly, deliberately. "You have the right to remain silent." She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Her sister started crying. Someone in the crowd had their phone up, recording. Ortiz cuffed her in front of everyone. The room was so quiet you could hear the metal click of the handcuffs, the rustle of her dress as she stumbled slightly, the sharp intake of breath from 50 people watching justice happen in real time. He led her toward the door. She walked stiffly, head down now, the navy dress and pearls looking ridiculous and sad. As she passed me, she looked up. Our eyes met for maybe 2 seconds. I didn't say anything, didn't gloat, didn't smile. I just watched her go. When the door closed behind her, the room stayed silent for another 10 seconds. Then someone started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Then everyone joined in. I stood there in the middle of that applause, in that room that smelled like burnt coffee and victory, and I thought about Uncle Donovan, about his workshop, about the trees he'd planted and protected, about the 20 summers I'd spent learning that good work takes time, and that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems impossible. Lionel pulled me to the front. Someone handed me a microphone I didn't want. The room went quiet. "This community deserves better," I said. My voice cracked on the first word, so I cleared my throat and tried again. "This community deserves transparency, accountability, leadership that serves everyone, not just the people at the top. That's what we're going to give you, starting now." The applause was deafening. I handed the microphone to Lionel and walked outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The air smelled like October, fallen leaves and wood smoke and the particular cold that means winter's coming. Marissa called as I was getting into my truck. "Dad, you're trending on Twitter. There's a video of the arrest. It has like 50,000 views." Jesus. "No, Dad, it's good. People are calling you a hero. They're saying this is what standing up to corruption looks like." I laughed, tired and overwhelmed. "I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I'm just a guy who got mad about his trees." "Yeah, well, your trees saved a whole neighborhood. I'm proud of you." That one got me. I had to pull over for a second because my eyes were blurring. "Thanks, Marissa. That means everything." I drove home with the windows down, even though it was cold, because I wanted to feel the air. Hank and Dolly were waiting on the porch. I sat down between them and just breathed for a while. We'd won. It didn't bring back the trees. Didn't erase 3 months of hell. Didn't give Indira Patel her life back. But it was something. It was a start. The first meeting of the new board happened on a Tuesday night, exactly 1 week after the election. We met in the same clubhouse where Shaina had ruled for 4 years, but the energy was completely different. No PowerPoints, no gavels, just 7 people sitting around a table with coffee and legal pads trying to figure out how to fix what was broken. Lionel was elected board president, unanimous vote. I became vice president, mostly because I understood contracts and budgets and nobody else wanted to wade through Shaina's financial wreckage. Deirdre took over community outreach. Eugene, who'd resigned from the old board but asked to help with the transition, volunteered to assist with a full financial audit on a temporary basis. Margaret came with him. They both looked lighter somehow, like they'd been carrying concrete blocks and finally put them down. Our first order of business? The money. The forensic audit took 3 weeks and confirmed everything Eugene had documented. $137,000 embezzled over 4 years through fake invoices, padded contracts, and kickbacks. The DA's office had frozen Shaina's assets, her house, her Mercedes, her business accounts. We recovered $97,000 through liens and seizures. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to refill the reserve fund and refund some of the more egregious fines she'd levied. Jerry got his $300 back for the grass clippings. Mr. Cho got his $500 for the garden gnome. We went through 4 years of violation notices and reversed every one that was clearly retaliatory or selectively enforced. Second order of business, the bylaws. We rewrote 17 sections, added transparency requirements, all financial records posted online monthly, updated within 15 days. All board meetings recorded and archived. Any expenditure over $5,000 required a membership vote. No board member could have a financial interest in any HOA contractor. Violation notices had to include photographic evidence, date stamps, and a clear appeals process. Basically, we made it impossible for another Shaina to happen. Third order of business, my land. The illegal road was torn up. We hired a different contractor, fully licensed and insured, thank you very much, and the property restored. It cost $42,000 from the recovered funds. The HOA voted to approve it 308 to 14. Some people still thought I was difficult, apparently. I could live with that. But we didn't just restore my land. We turned it into something more. Rajiv drove down for the dedication ceremony in early December. We'd planted 50 native oak saplings across 5 acres, my property and some adjoining HOA common land. A professional arborist had designed it as a memorial grove with winding paths, benches I'd built in my workshop, and a stone marker that read, Indira Patel Memorial Grove. In memory of those who came before us, and in hope for those who come after, may we always choose kindness over cruelty and justice over silence. Rajiv stood in front of that stone for a long time, his hand resting on the granite. Margaret wheeled up beside him and took his other hand. Nobody said anything. The December wind moved through the saplings. They were small now, barely 4 feet tall, but in 50 years they'd be giants. In 100 years, someone's great-grandkids would play in their shade and never know about Shaina or bulldozers or the fight it took to plant them. That felt right. We also established the Patel Family Scholarship, $5,000 a year for local high school students pursuing social work, elder advocacy, or community law, funded by recovered embezzlement money. The first recipient was announced in the spring, a kid named Marcus, whose grandmother had been foreclosed on by a different HOA 3 counties over. He wanted to become a lawyer specializing in housing rights. When he gave his acceptance speech at the scholarship dinner, he said, "Nobody should lose their home because they can't afford to fight back." The whole room stood up and applauded. As for Shaina, she pleaded guilty to avoid trial. 18 months in minimum security, 5 years probation, restitution payments that would follow her for a decade. Her real estate license was permanently revoked. Her marriage to husband number 3 ended in divorce. He filed 3 weeks after her arrest. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Greensboro and selling leggings through a multi-level marketing scheme on Facebook. Karma isn't always poetic, but sometimes it's efficient. My life got quieter after that. The news crews left, the lawyer bills got paid off. Marissa came home for Thanksgiving with her girlfriend, and we cooked dinner together while Hank and Dolly begged for turkey scraps. My daughter looked at me over mashed potatoes and said, "You know you're kind of a badass, right?" And I laughed so hard I almost choked. I still have nightmares sometimes about the sound of that oak tree cracking. Still get angry when I think about Indira Patel and the stroke she didn't have to have. But mostly I feel something I haven't felt in years, like I'm part of something good. Pinehaven Estates became a case study. The state legislature cited our recall when they passed new HOA oversight laws in 2026, requirements for independent audits, stricter rules on board member conflicts of interest, easier processes for homeowners to challenge decisions. It's not perfect, but it's better. And sometimes better is enough. I'm sitting on my porch right now, same spot where this whole thing started. It's early spring. The saplings in the Memorial Grove are budding. Hank is asleep at my feet. Dolly is watching a butterfly with intense suspicion but hasn't barked yet, which counts as personal growth. Lionel just texted, "Board meeting Thursday. Agenda? Playground equipment proposals. Very boring, very normal. Perfect." And that's the thing, isn't it? We didn't just win a fight, we made boring normal again. We made the HOA something it's supposed to be. A community organization that fixes streetlights and plans 4th of July barbecues and occasionally debates playground equipment without threatening to foreclose on anyone. Revolutionary. If your HOA is out of control, you're not powerless. Document everything. Know your state laws. Most allow members to inspect financial records and petition for recalls. Find allies. Follow the money, because corruption leaves paper trails. And sometimes, the scariest thing you can do to a bully is refuse to be scared. Drop a comment with your worst HOA horror story. The most insane one gets featured in the next video. And if you want to see more stories about people who fought back and won, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started. Because here's the truth, Shaina wasn't special. There are Shainas and HOAs across the country, petty tyrants with gavels and bylaws, crushing people because they can. But there are also Lionels and Deirdres and Eugens and Margarets, people who find their courage when it matters. People like you. So if you're in a fight right now, if you're staring down your own Shaina and wondering if it's worth it, it is. The trees are worth it. The Indira Patels of the world are worth it. Your peace is worth it. Fight back, win, and then plant something beautiful in the ruins.